Dank díobh agus tá fáilte is mis an Kelly Beag. Hello and you're very welcome. I'm the little storyteller. We have a community question today, which I thought I'd take a bit of time to answer, and it's almost going to be a little bit of show and tell. So the question actually came through in the YouTube comments, which I'm very, very grateful for, and thank you very much for connecting with me there in these videos. And it was, if I have a cauldron for the Dagda in my altar space, can it be an iron cauldron? Because I tried to search around about the cauldron, but there's still a bit of confusion. I know the fair folk of Ireland, or the good neighbours, don't like iron, but can I consider the Dagda in the same way, or can I just consider the Dagda likewise? It's a really great question. It really is, and it's very correct in a number of different ways, and it's also very aware and compassionate in a number of ways, which I thought was really good, and I'm delighted to be able to connect with it. Um, so the first thing I'd probably like to do is just show you this. So this is the cauldron that I'm holding on to. So I don't see this cauldron as mine. This is a cauldron that was a gift for Ireland from a friend of mine who went on a spiritual pilgrimage, and they traveled across. They brought it into Ireland and then across to Wales and then back to Ireland. And they weren't sure what to do with it. And then I was like, listen, figure it out along the way. Follow your spiritual journey. Connect with the Dagda as you're going through your processes. You'll know what to do by the end of your journey. Because that was it. That's as far as I thought my involvement would be. But at the end of their journey, they came back and was like, "Yeah, I think I know what I need to do. You need to hold on to it." And I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 hold on." Um, so that is why it's not my cauldron. I don't see it as mine. This is Ireland's cauldron. It's just resting in my altar space. Um, so it is a copper cauldron. So it's made out of that metal, and it's a very practical. It has actually been used in the past. I don't know if we're dealing at antique levels of age, but it is a very, very old cauldron. It's a very, very beautiful piece of work, um, and we have cooked in it, and it was tasty and it was awesome. So it's not just a representative or a symbolic item. It is a practical item as well. It goes well over fire, and I have personally scrubbed this out with gravel to get the fire blackening off it because it's beautiful. So the the thing about the symbolism involved and the question over the iron are really fantastic. So the connection of the Dagda with the cauldron is very core because of all of the magical tools that the Dagda is linked to. The cauldron is one of the four treasures of the Tuatha Danann that was brought into Ireland. So there is the Cleave Sholas, which is the sword of light, or the blade that was given to Nuada, and this sword was said that no one could stand against it. Once it was drawn, no one could stand against it. There was the spear, which was carried by Lu, which again said that no one could overcome the spear. Like, no one could kind of win against the use of that spear. There was the Leah Fall, which is known as the Stone of Destiny or Sovereignty, which would then cry out under the proper and rightful King of Ireland. And then there's the cauldron. And the only thing that's said in the lore about the cauldron is that no company would go from it unsatisfied. And it's called the Cauldron of the Dagda. So when we have other names for these other tools, or other kind of treasures, this one is called the Cauldron of the Dagda. Now, of course, it's very interesting because is the Dagda because he has the cauldron? Or is the cauldron because it belongs to the Dagda? So it's almost like a chicken and an egg circumstance. What makes it the Dagda's cauldron? Is it because it's the Dagda, or is the cauldron itself the treasure that then is carried by someone who becomes or carries the title and the cauldron of the Dagda? So there's been a lot of kind of other stuff crossed over and checked in regards to cauldrons and the link with the cauldron and the Dagda. There's a lot of confusion as well with the cauldron in the Mabinogi, which is a Welsh kind of story, and these cauldrons which would be able to bring people back from the dead, etc., or heal all wounds. If a person was placed into it wounded, they would come back like healed from that cauldron. But none of these specific attributes are given to the Dagda's cauldron. It just says that no one would go from it unsatisfied. So many cauldrons are made of iron. From the medieval period onward, that was the predominant metal once we moved out of the Bronze Age. And it can be kind of tricky to find vessels that do not have some kind of iron in them. And the reason why iron becomes a bit of concern is that it is said to be an antithesis. It's worse than an allergy to the Fae folk, or the She, as they're known in Ireland. Um, a lot of Irish traditions would talk about the magic of the blacksmith and how the working of the iron through fire was actually something that would be a warding or a boundary against She invasions, or She kind of coming into your home, your property. A lot of horseshoes that you would see hung above doors were actually not just for luck; they were actually there to ward or to guard against She, because the touch of iron would kind of burn them in essence, or kind of keep them away. So you have this kind of crossover, because the Dagda being connected with the cauldron, but the Dagda is also connected with the other tool known as the An Lorach Mór, which is the great club or the great staff. And in certain translations of the stories, there is a description given of this weapon. And it's also known as An Lorach Anfia, the terrible stave or the storm stave. And it is said to have an iron head. So the story about how the Dagda came to possess this club or staff says there's one rough end and one smooth end. The rough end would kill, the smooth end would restore life. But in this other later description, it said that the rough end had kind of metal. It was an iron-ended, iron-banded club in essence. So that does connect the Dagda to iron in that way. But again, is that a latter kind of addition to the story or not? So it's a really good question and tricky, because we know that the Tuatha Dé Danann, with the arrival of the Sons of Mill, the Milesians, into Ireland as the final invasion, because they became the Gael people who, the rest of us are all descended from, the Tuatha Dé Danann were forced into the Hollow Hills, and that's what they're known as. Like, they became the She, the people of the Hollow Hills. But in all of that time, even before that time, the Dagda was connected with the people, the She people. He was known as a king of the She, and is still known as a king amongst the She, in that he has authority over them. He can go to them and say, listen, what do we need to sort out here? So there is that power in essence built into the Dagda, but is he She? In that essence, is because he came in as Tuatha Dé Danann onto the island and then went into the Hollow Hills, does he have the same allergic antithesis reaction to iron as other She would? And the answer to that is I don't know. And I'll be honest, I will say that I don't know. I haven't gone delving into a lot of lore. My personal feeling on it, my personal gnosis working with Dagda, um, and again, this is where I want to be clear. Like, I can give you information from the Lord that we have in record and documents, but then I want to be clear where this is where it moves into my own personal practice and my relationship with this deity. As a follower, like a spiritual follower of his path and practice, I don't think he has the same allergy to. Probably allergy isn't even like the right word to use. His the same antithesis to iron as others would. So in regards to an iron cauldron on your altar space, specifically for the Dagda, I think the first and best thing to do is to really approach the Dagda yourself, specifically. Like, with any kind of deity interactions, I would always recommend, sit with it, take some time with it, explore the relationship, explore the lore, trying to build your own connection to that energy, that deity, and then present it. Like, for me, in my personal practice, the Dagda speaks very clearly into my heart, and sometimes he has to shout loudly into my heart for it to get into my head. But I know when it feels right or when it feels wrong. And so at times I will pick something up and I'll be like, oh, I'll put this on the altar for the Dagda, and then it won't happen. I'll just be like, actually, no. Or the other side, I'm making a coffee and it's like, I get the feel of like, oh, well, I better make two to put one on the altar. Funny enough, actually, inside here, I will show you, because there is a Baby Bell cheese, in that I walked past the office eating a cheese and I got that kind of, yeah. And also there's a Cadbury's cream egg. So these are offerings of food, offerings of my favorite kind of foods. And so the sacrifice then is me not having it to a certain degree, and then him getting to enjoy that, the essence of that. But that's probably a different kind of video to talk about offerings in a later date. So what I would say is, I'm delighted that people are actively seeking connectivity with the Dagda and actively looking to acknowledge him in their altar spaces. So thank you very, very much for that. I really appreciate it. And what I would say is approach and ask. Like if you're following a spiritual path, if you believe that you have a connection to deity, there's no problems with asking them about it. If you get the feeling it's wrong, it's probably wrong, and maybe you need to like read to find out the why. Especially with that, he give you that kind of like, well, figure it out and come back to me. So it's a great question, and thank you very, very much for connecting with it and presenting it to me. It's been a really great thought exercise to kind of go through. So just to summarize, no, he's not allergic to iron. No, I wouldn't see it as being disrespectful, especially if it's a practical item, just not a like for me and my connection with the diet. And everything we know from the story, he's very practical. He's a guy who kind of digs the trenches to make tara. He's a guy who goes out with his axe and fells an entire like forest to clear a plain for his kid. You know, he's a doing deity, and it's less about like fancy kind of shiny stuff and more about practical kind of useful things. And so I would have a look at the cauldron. I would check and see if you're comfortable with it, and then like present it and ask. You know, there's nothing wrong with asking. So thank you very much for this. I really, really appreciate it. I'm very, very grateful to my community and the opportunities that are presented with these questions, because it is about perspective, and perspective, being able to share in perspective, being able to engage with someone else's perspective is truly a gift. And thank you very much. Gurav Mahagat. Agus Lán. Goodbye.